3 days before Christmas, my phone rang while I was folding scrubs. I was standing in the hallway of my apartment, still smelling like antiseptic and latex, when Ethan's name lit up on the screen. I smiled. Silly, really. After everything. But part of me still wanted to believe it was a check-in. A hey, how's the hospital, how's the night shift, how's your back, how's you? I answered on the second ring. Hey, I said. He didn't waste time. Mom said maybe this year you should just rest. Rest. I sat down slowly. On the floor. Next to a pile of clean towels. Sorry. He cleared his throat. You know, the last few times, it felt like you were kind of stressed. And, well, Celeste is coming this year. Celeste. His new girlfriend. The one with the lifestyle blog and a morning routine that starts with herbal steam and ends with affirmation rituals. Mom doesn't want tension, he added. And just like that, I was uninvited from Christmas. After he hung up, I stared at the gifts by the door. Wrapped in matte paper. Tied with ribbons I bought on sale. Labeled in handwriting I practiced to make look effortless. They looked stupid now. Like a love letter returned unopened. I didn't cry. Not right away. Instead, I went to my laptop and opened my banking app, canceled 3 auto payments. A mom's prescription refill coverage, a dad's overdue utility balance, Ethan's Amazon Prime membership. Yes, the one he never paid for. Each click felt like a stitch coming undone. A thread being pulled from the lie I'd kept weaving for years. 2 hours later, Mom called. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity is a cruel muscle. Hi, honey, she said, voice soft like static. We just thought, this year with your schedule and the night shifts, it might be better for you to take a break. Plus, Celeste doesn't do well with tension. Tension. My name had become synonymous with disruption. A problem to be managed. A variable in their aesthetic. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't ask why she never said thank you for the flight I paid for last year. Why she never told me she loved the watch I sent. Why she only texts when something breaks. I just said, okay, and hung up. Later that night, I stared at the ornament Ethan made when he was 5. A glitter mess with googly eyes and a crooked paper halo. He made it for me. Called it Sister Angel. I almost threw it away. But didn't. Because grief is a funny thing. Sometimes it feels like love wearing a disguise. The next day, I worked a double shift. The hospital lobby was draped in twinkly lights and paper snowflakes. Someone had tied a Santa hat on the 4-pole at reception. We lost a patient that night. A woman in her 80s with no listed next of kin. When she passed, I sat by her bed for 10 minutes. Just so she wasn't alone. Later, as I walked to my car at 3 a.m., I thought, this is Christmas. Not the tree. Not the dinner. Not the curated social media post with the caption "Family is everything." No. Christmas is staying. Even when no one claps. Even when they uninvite you. Even when they forget what you gave, and only remember what you didn't. I got home and set the gifts aside. Not out of spite. Just surrender. Because I realized I'd been buying my way into a family portrait I was always cropped out of. They say love is unconditional. But I've learned that in some families, love has a dress code. Be agreeable. Be easy. Don't question. Don't outgrow. Don't confront the silence. And if you do, they'll call it drama. That night, I didn't turn on the lights. Just sat on the couch in my work clothes. Ate cold bread pudding from the tin. My cat crawled into my lap. Purred. And I whispered, we're not going this year. Like it was a spell. A breaking. A beginning. Some people are raised to give. And some are raised to be forgiven. I was always the first. And this Christmas? I gave myself back to me. They didn't say you're not welcome. They said, you might need rest. But what they really meant was, you no longer serve our comfort. And for the first time, I let that be enough. I used to think love meant being needed. Turns out, it meant being useful. Until you weren't. Until someone newer, smoother, lighter walked in, and suddenly your edges were too sharp. Your silence too loud. Your presence too honest. Christmas Eve came like any other day. I worked the night shift. Because when your family stops asking if you're coming home for the holidays, you stop asking yourself too. The hospital halls were quiet that night. Sterile tinsel on handrails. Battery-powered candles flickering in break rooms that smelled like burnt coffee and too much Lysol. In room 206, a boy named Jordan smiled at me through an oxygen mask. "Did Santa skip me?" he asked. I said, "He's just late. He's dealing with back orders," he giggled. And for a moment, I forgot that just 24 hours ago, my brother told me I didn't fit the holiday anymore. After work, I drove home under a sky full of snow so soft it looked like an apology. There were no cars. Just tire tracks disappearing behind me. Like proof that I had been somewhere. Like a metaphor for how I kept showing up in their lives, only to be erased when the snow settled. My apartment was dark when I got back. Cold. Quiet. The kind of quiet that feels staged. I lit one candle. Not scented. Just a stub of wax left from a birthday cake I bought for myself last year. The bread pudding was still in the fridge. Untouched. I ate it cold. Sitting cross-legged on the floor. No tree. No lights. No wrapping paper mess. Just me. And a silence that finally felt like it belonged to me. You think you'll break. You think the loneliness will eat you alive. But then, you don't. You just survive. Not loudly. Not bravely. Just slowly. Like a pulse returning after numbness. Around 11 p.m., I opened my messages. Not to check for texts. I knew there wouldn't be any. But to look at the old ones. The ones from years ago. Don't forget the eggnog. Ethan still doesn't know how to wrap. Bring extra tape. Can you pick up Grandma's meds on the way? Little reminders of how often I'd been used, and how rarely I'd been seen. I used to think being the reliable one was something to be proud of. But now I know, being reliable in a family that only calls when they need you is just another word for disposable. When I was 12, I asked Mom why Ethan always got the bigger stocking. She smiled and said, "He's younger. Let him have the magic." But he never grew out of it. And I never stopped shrinking. I stayed up that night. Not because I was waiting. But because I didn't want the day to end without acknowledging it had happened. I lit a second candle. And whispered, "I'm still here. Not for them. For me." The next morning, Christmas, I made pancakes. Alone. Syrup pooled on the plate like spilled truth. I ate them in silence. No background music. No Instagram photos. No pretending this was some sort of self-care aesthetic. It was survival. And it was enough. I got one text around noon. Not from family. From Miriam, a nurse on my floor. "Hope you're okay today. I saved you one of the good muffins. The blueberry one you like." I stared at it. And cried. Because sometimes, kindness from a near stranger feels more like family than 1,000 bloodline obligations ever could. I thought about last year. Driving 4 hours on no sleep just to arrive to a cold hug and a microwaved plate of food they forgot to make vegan. I thought about how Vanessa, Ethan's ex, had hugged me tighter than anyone else. And how 2 months later, she messaged me privately, "You're the only one who felt like home at that dinner. Thank you." And how I never told anyone. Because when you're invisible for long enough, even gratitude feels dangerous to claim. I didn't respond to Miriam's text. Not yet. I didn't have the words. But I knew something had shifted. Not in the world. In me. Because for the first time in years, Christmas didn't feel like something I was failing. It just felt like something I was finally free from. Absence isn't the opposite of presence. Sometimes, it's the only way you get to feel your own weight. Your own worth. The space you've been shrinking inside for too long, expanding quietly. In the silence they left behind. I wasn't there when it happened. But somehow, I ruined Christmas. The message came from Aunt Lillian. One word. What happened? No context. No punctuation. Just a digital whisper across 3 years of distance. I stared at the screen. Thought about ignoring it. Then another message. Celeste left. There was shouting. Your mom's crying. Something about a photo. My hands went still. The photo. I knew exactly which one. Mom kept it on the mantle every year. Me and Ethan in matching pajamas. Him 6, grinning. Me 8, holding a snow globe in both hands. I remember that snow globe. It was the only gift I picked myself. I bought it at a gas station with saved up lunch money. For Grandpa. He cried when he opened it. I never saw it again. That photo had survived every move, every redecoration. But I hadn't. They'd stopped putting it out after I cut my hair short. After I said no to the church. After I started talking about boundaries instead of showing up out of guilt. I became inconvenient. So they cut me from the frame. But this year they brought it back. Probably for decoration. A little nostalgia. They forgot I was still in it. Celeste must have noticed. During dinner. After grace. After the awkward jokes and performative laughter. I imagine her holding the photo up. Her soft voice carrying just enough steel to cut through the room. Is this Natalie? Forks pausing mid-air. Eyes darting. Breaths caught. She looks familiar. Maybe someone chuckled nervously. Said something like, oh yeah, that's Ethan's sister. She's around. Then she said it. That's the doctor who saved my grandmother. I never knew who Celeste was connected to. Never asked. Because I don't treat patients to be remembered. I do it to keep people alive. But her grandmother, Mrs. Ruskin, was the one with the brittle lungs and the quiet eyes. Who squeezed my hand during her 3rd round of breathing treatments and whispered, you talk to me like I'm not already dead. Celeste remembered me. The way no one in that house ever wanted to. For what I did. Not for what I ruined. Lillian said there was silence after that. Celeste stood up, looked around the table, and said, you told me she wasn't speaking to the family. That she was bitter, unstable, cold. My mother tried to explain. Ethan said it was complicated, but Celeste wasn't stupid. She saw the photo, heard the tone, read the subtext between the sugar cookies and passive-aggressive wine refills. Then she left. Without dessert. Without a goodbye. An hour later, she posted on Instagram. A simple black square. White text. Sometimes, the person they frame as difficult was just tired of being used. The comments flooded in. Mutual friends. Distant cousins. Even people I hadn't spoken to since college. Who's she talking about? Did something happen? Wait. Is this about Natalie? My name resurfaced. Not as a punchline. As a question. The next morning, I got 2 texts from Ethan. First, we need to talk. Then hours later, you made things worse than they already were. I didn't reply. Because I didn't do anything. That's the part they still didn't get. I wasn't even in the room. But absence. Absence tells the truth louder than presence ever could. They had built their story around my silence. Used it as scaffolding to hold up their shame. Natalie is moody. Natalie cut us off. Natalie's too intense. But now someone outside the family had seen me, clearly, kindly, and their story started to collapse. I scrolled through Celeste's feed. Past the lifestyle posts and clean girl aesthetics. There it was, a blurry photo of her grandma in a hospital bed. Me in the corner, barely visible. A blur in blue scrubs, holding a chart. Captioned, she called her by name. Not patient number. Not sweetie. Just her name. That changed everything. I stared at that photo for a long time. Not because I looked good. I didn't. But because for once, I wasn't invisible. It wasn't me who broke the family. It was the truth. Arriving late. wearing no makeup, holding a mirror. You don't have to raise your voice to shatter the lie. Sometimes, it only takes someone finally seeing you, and saying so. They didn't say, "We're sorry." They said, "Let's reset." As if years of silence could be wiped clean with a subject line. The email arrived 2 days after the dinner disaster. It started with, "We've all been reflecting," and ended with, "We hope you'll consider reconnecting, if and when you're ready." No names. No accountability. Just a neat little paragraph trying to scrub out a decade of neglect. I stared at it like it was written in a language I used to speak but no longer believed in. I didn't respond. Not because I was being cruel, but because silence is the only language they never learned how to manipulate. Later that night, I got a voicemail from my father. He never calls. He said he was concerned, said I seemed isolated, said he'd heard from someone that I might be struggling emotionally. Then the kicker, maybe work's been too hard lately. Maybe it's time to slow down. Translation, you embarrassed us. Now we're going to paint you as unstable, so no one listens to what you say. It wasn't concern. It was containment. The next day, my workplace manager pulled me aside. Said she received a wellness inquiry from a private number. Someone had asked about my recent behavior. Suggested I might be overworked. Hinted that I was having outbursts. She looked confused. Concerned. I laughed. "I haven't taken a sick day in a year," she nodded. "We know. But people talk. People talk. Especially when they feel control slipping. Especially when someone else exposes a truth they've spent years dressing in ribbons and deflection." I went home. Locked my door. And sat on the floor of my kitchen. Not crying. Just still. Because what do you do when the people who raised you start rewriting your mental health because they can't rewrite their choices? You breathe. You eat something. You play music. You move on. The next day, a new email arrived. From Mom. Longer this time. But still hollow. She said she missed my laugh. Said she thought I was just going through a phase. Said she never realized how much pressure I felt. No mention of the lie. No apology for the number they gave Grandpa. No explanation for the photo, the fake narratives, the public silence. Just a handful of flowers made of glass. Pretty, fragile, sharp when they break. I wrote a response. Drafted it twice. Then deleted it. Because they weren't asking for healing. They were asking for repair. For me to sweep up the glass and pretend the cuts never happened. The next week, Ethan texted, "This got way out of hand. Celeste is really upset. She hasn't returned my calls. Then, you should probably reach out to her. It would mean a lot. She really liked you. Liked me." I stared at those words. As if I was a stranger who had wandered into their lives and messed up the script. As if my only role now was damage control. They didn't care about how Celeste saw me. They cared that she saw them too clearly. And now I was supposed to fix it. Like always. Be the bridge. Be the buffer. Be the band-aid. But I wasn't bleeding anymore. That night, I wrote something in my notebook. This isn't family. This is image management. And once you see it for what it is, you stop trying to edit yourself to fit back inside the frame. The funny thing is, they didn't do anything new. They just finally made it loud enough that I couldn't pretend it was love anymore. Some apologies aren't made of truth. They're made of fear. Fear of exposure. Fear of consequence. Fear of losing control. But the thing about glass apologies is, they always crack. Under their own weight. They came to my door with smiles. But I saw it for what it was. Damage control dressed like reconciliation. It was Sunday afternoon. I was still in sweatpants, hair up, unwashed. I hadn't planned to see anyone. Then the knock. 2 soft taps. Like guilt trying not to wake the baby it abandoned. I froze. Peeked through the peephole. And there they were. Mom. Dad. Ethan. Standing on my doorstep like they hadn't erased me just 2 weeks ago. Mom was holding a gift bag. Dad wore that faux sincere face he used when trying to get out of parking tickets. Ethan looked like he was about to pitch a startup. I didn't open the door. Not right away. Just leaned my head against the wall and listened to the muffled rehearsals outside. Don't push her. Just be kind. Say, we miss you, not you overreacted. After 2 minutes, I cracked it open. Just enough to let my voice through. What do you want? Mom smiled too quickly. We just wanted to talk. I raised an eyebrow. About what? Dad stepped forward, hands open like peace flags. About moving forward. About healing. It's time we stop holding on to negativity. Negativity. They still didn't get it. They thought my pain was bitterness. My boundaries were mood swings. My absence was a phase. And now that the image cracked, now that Celeste had left, now that mutual friends were starting to whisper, they remembered I existed. I stepped outside. Barefoot. Arms crossed. The air was cold. You didn't come here for me, I said. You came here for the version of me that won't talk about what you did. Mom's face fell. Ethan looked away. Dad forced a chuckle. Natalie, it's Christmas. I know, I said. I spent it alone. Remember, they shifted like actors forgetting their lines. Mom held up the gift bag. We brought you something. I didn't take it. Why now? Ethan finally spoke. Because it's time we put the past behind us. Which part? I asked. The part where you gave Grandpa a fake number? The funeral I wasn't told about? Or the years of being good enough to send money, but not good enough to sit at the table? They didn't answer. Because the answers would cost them more than they were willing to pay. Silence fell heavy. I took a deep breath. You want forgiveness, I said, but you haven't earned it. Mom's eyes welled. Dad looked tired. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it again. Good. Because I wasn't looking for excuses. I was looking for change. And I didn't see it. They asked to come in. I said no. Not loudly. Not cruelly. Just firmly. Like someone who'd finally stopped making herself smaller to be let in. I closed the door. Slowly. Carefully. So it wouldn't slam. Because I wasn't angry. I was done. I sat on the floor, back against the wood. They knocked again. Softly. I didn't answer. Because some doors are meant to stay closed. I poured tea. Read a book. Lit a candle. And for the first time in weeks, maybe in years, I didn't feel like the villain in their story. I felt like the author of mine. Later that night, I checked the gift bag they left. Inside, a scarf, burgundy, soft. Still had the price tag on it. $22.99 clearance. I folded it carefully. Set it on a shelf. Not as a keepsake. As a reminder. That even now, they didn't know what I needed. Some people think showing up is enough. They mistake arrival for repair. But true healing doesn't start at the door. It starts with accountability. And they weren't ready. So I wasn't opening anything. For years, I opened the door at every knock. Even when it hurt. Even when I wasn't welcome. Even when all they wanted was to feel good about not being better. But not this time. This time the door stayed shut, because so did the lies. They erased me from the story. But someone outside the family saw me. And remembered. The letter came in a pale blue envelope. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in soft, looping script. Like someone still believed in handwriting as a form of intimacy. I opened it slowly. Not because I was nervous, because something told me it wasn't noise. It was truth. Inside, a folded sheet of heavy paper and a pressed forget-me-not taped to the corner. I recognized the flower. Mrs. Ruskin kept them in her window at the hospital. They were her favorite. The letter was from Celeste. Dear Natalie, I wasn't sure if I should write. But there are some silences that feel like betrayal, and I didn't want to become one of them. When I saw your photo, I didn't just remember your face. I remembered the way my grandmother spoke about you. How you gave her dignity in a place where people treated her like an expiration date. You looked her in the eye. You used her name. You told her jokes even when she couldn't laugh. You were the only person who made her feel like she wasn't already gone. I had to pause reading there. Not because I was overwhelmed. Because I had never heard those words from the people who claimed to love me. I kept reading. I didn't understand why your family seemed uncomfortable when I said your name. But then I did. You are not convenient. You are not soft edges and polite nods. You are real. And real people terrify those who rely on fiction. I hope you know what you gave my family. I hope they realize what they lost. I see you. I saw you before the photo. But now. I know your name in a different way. With gratitude, Celeste. I folded the letter. Not neatly. Not perfectly. Just with reverence. Then taped it above my desk. Not for validation. For proof that what I do matters. That who I am matters. Even when the people closest to me pretend it doesn't. I kept the flower too. Between pages of the journal I never let anyone read. It'll stay there. Pressed into memory. Like kindness that didn't demand attention. A week passed. No new calls from family. Just one email from Ethan. Short. Fragmented. She left me. Celeste's gone. Thanks for ruining Christmas. I didn't reply. Because I didn't ruin anything. The cracks were already there. I just stopped filling them with myself. He wanted me to fix what he broke. But I'm not glue. I'm not the bridge. I'm not the emotional janitor sweeping up behind their tantrums. Not anymore. Now. I build. Quietly. Consistently. Without needing to be seen. But refusing to be erased. Miriam brought me a muffin at work the next morning. Blueberry. Still warm. I smiled. It felt more like family than anything I'd known in years. My desk isn't big. But it holds what matters. The forget-me-not letter. A photo of Mrs. Ruskin smiling in her gown. And one other thing, a small note from a child named Leo, written in crayon. Thank you for helping my mom breathe again. That's the thing about impact. It doesn't always echo in the places you expect. Sometimes it lands soft. Like breath. Like survival. Like a whisper that saves someone's life, without anyone else noticing. This is the life I choose now. Not the one handed down with obligation. Not the one shaped by guilt and performance. But the one I built out of quiet and scars and staying kind anyway. My family hasn't earned me back. And maybe they never will. But I don't need the apology anymore. Because I have the proof. Someone saw me. And that's more than enough. You don't need to be invited back to belong. Sometimes, being left out is how you step fully into yourself.